Well, good morning, everyone. I hope you had a beautiful Easter celebration. And this is Monday, Easter Monday. And I want to thank those people for their wonderful, happy birthday wishes yesterday. It was a beautiful day together with Marriott and I. Um, uh, Spending the day just enjoying being together and the time to kind of celebrate Easter and enjoy the beautiful weather that we've been having. So um, today I'd like to open up to a process which is aligned more directly with the quarantine that we're experiencing and the challenges that we're facing. And of course, this is my experience and my interpretation of this, and so take it as it is. But if we're looking at our communal experience of what's going on, I think it's clear that we're coming to a realization that the structures that we have believed in terms of our social structures and our and the nature that we run our social interaction, it are not functioning right now. They're not doing a very good job of adapting to um, this change. And so our economic structures are, in a way, being impacted um, almost as if they're disassembling. They're being disrupted. In a way, they're kind of under crisis, and people are losing their jobs. People are losing their livelihood, and all of this is having a tremendous impact on our social uh, fabric, the fabric of the way we function. And this kind of disassembling or deconstructing of our social network, our social structures, is something that's happening actually right in front of our eyes. And where we go with that, how we reform economically and socially, is a big question. But in terms of ourselves individually, this disruption of our society and how we function is having an impact on our individual experience, on the way we see ourselves individually. So just at the simple sense of that, generally we have a sense of where we are going in our life, what we're planning on doing, and how we envision our future. Because of the quarantine and the unknowable nature of what is the next step, that whole projection into our future has been disrupted in an incredibly profound way. And that has an impact on our sense of identity. Because oftentimes our sense of identity is tied to our ideas of where we're going, what we're planning. And when we can no longer we can no longer feel that we can trust the ideas that we have or the plans that we have for the future. We can't trust that they're going to be able to be realized. Then that draws an immediate impact on who I feel I am. And likewise, when our lives change so much that we're no longer able to perform or to act in the way that we normally act for myself, that means I can no longer teach Aikido in the dojo right now. And so who am I if I'm no longer able to be a teacher of Aikido? And so that's not only a question for me, but that's a question for everyone who's been impacted in a way that they can no longer fundamentally function in their lives in the way that they normally are comfortable with or associated with. So if I can't function in the way that I normally associate myself to be, who am I? So, and the plans I have for the future are no longer sustainable, or they're drawn into question because I can't trust that the future will unfold in the way that it has unfolded for me in the past. Who am I? So as our social structures get disassembled in a way and questioned, is this working? Are our social structures working? And obviously, in many ways, they are not. And I think all of us have realized that from quite some time in relationship to how we function with regards to the climate crisis and our natural world and the delicate nature of our biosphere. We realize that we're on an unsustainable track, but now it's become very clear to us that our track is clearly unsustainable because it's not functioning in relationship to the COVID virus. So our structures are getting questioned, and the economic nature of them are unsustainable just in front of us. They can't be sustained in this way. And that draws into question then myself. So who am I in this situation where I can't plan for the future? Because the economic and social structure that I exist in is now being called into question. And if that's being called into question, then the plans that I had laid out, which were supported by that social structure, are also called into question. And if my plans are called into question, then who am I without my plans? And if my job is called into question, who am I without my job? So suddenly now my own individual nature, my identity based on my plans and my job, where I'm going and what do I do, that is questioned. And as I question that, it starts to shake the nature of how I see myself. So this nature of how I see myself, the nature of my structured identity, is starting to get hit by the quarantine, the virus, and the way things are going in the world around. Now, if I resist that questioning, if I resist that destabilizing experience, that deconstruction, if I resist that, then there's a tremendous contraction or conflict between what is happening and my resistance to it. The fact that I am not in control. The fact that I am not able to plan even the most simplest things, like next month, should we do the seminar? Should we not do the seminar? Should we plan this in June? Should we? I don't know. We have to wait. And all of that gets challenged. So in this great state of this inability to plan, this inability to foresee the most simplest things, it calls into question my whole operating system. Because my whole operating system has been based and connected with the social operating system. So the social operating system is disassembling as we speak. And that has an impact on all of our own operating systems. Our own operating systems, which are based and conditioned by our social operating systems. And those social operating systems have been based to a large part on a sense of right and wrong, belief structures, things that we've been brought up, told and taught. This is how we should act. How we conduct it and how we behave is based on how we've been brought up. Not only that, our structure is based on a competitive process. The competition that's entailed in a capitalistic world is one where I am successful when I move ahead or acquire more, whether it's more money or more friends or more power or more information. My success is based on how much more I gather, I collect. So all of that is part of how we operate. Now we're suddenly in a situation where that constant competition to get more, to win, to acquire, to move ahead is called into question, because when we realize that we're one system, a person who is ahead is impacted by the quality of life that the person who has been left behind is living. So if we have people at the bottom end of the social rung on this ladder that we're all trying to climb is suffering. In the past, that wasn't a problem for an individual who was successful. Well, if they're suffering, that's their problem. But now, with those people who are suffering, they suffer, and if they suffer, that suffering is shared, and that suffering is shared immediately via a virus, and we all have to face it. But that's just one manifestation of realizing that we are in this process together. So in a way, we can only truly function when we realize that we're one system, and that this whole system has to be included in order for us to be able to flourish. So in order for us to be able to flourish, we all have to find a way to operate that includes everyone and everything, the natural world, our social structures. So I know this is a long lead-in for a meditation process, but it takes as much as it takes. So the question is now, if we're not using our social conditioning and our belief structures that normally govern our behavior are called into question, in the sense of acquiring more and somehow finding our place in this big competitive race. If this way of approaching life is not working, how are we going to determine, how are we going to find, how are we going to access a new operating system that will work? How are we going to access a new operating system that will work? And that is something that we have to each do individually and collectively together. And so far our operating systems are based on our conditioning and our belief structures and our history and our traditions. And now we're looking at acquiring a different way of operating, but it can't be another belief structure, because just taking one belief structure in opposition to another belief structure to a certain extent won't be actually a move up to a different kind of operating system. It's just a move to move laterally. It's not a move in the vertical sense. It's moving horizontally and acquiring a different way of operating, and that, in my mind, I don't think will succeed. So how do we access a new operating system which is not just another belief structure? And so that's the direction for the meditation today. So if you take a moment and you close your eyes and you allow yourself to consider, what is the direction that you would want? What's the quality of the relationship you would want to have in relationship to the world around you? What's the quality of the relationship you would want the world to have in relationship to you? What's the nature of the relationship that you would want to have between yourself and the world? And what's the nature of that relationship you would hope to have between the world and yourself? What's the nature of the relationship you would hope to have between yourself, who you consider yourself to be, and your own internal experience, your body, your heart, your emotions, your thoughts, your memories? What's the nature of the relationship that you would hope to have with your own self, and what would you hope? Which direction would you want to move into? Now, what needs, I think, from my perspective, what would need to have happen is that relationship would have to be sustainable. That relationship would have to be supportive. That relationship would have to be, in a way, inclusive, in a sense that nothing can be excluded from that relationship. All people need to be included. All needs need to be honored in a way that our life can continue to flourish, to evolve. So if you close your eyes and feel into how would you directly determine a positive relationship with life between yourself and life? How would you feel into a new relationship or a new way of operating with life itself? something that can sustain the changes, something that doesn't deny our traditions, doesn't deny our belief structures, but isn't trapped or limited to them. But the way we operate and our relationship with life is functioning in an intelligent fashion that includes everything in life. Because if it doesn't include everything in life, it's not sustainable. You can't exclude part of the picture and expect that relationship to be sustainable and evolve and flourish in the future, because that part which has been excluded will eventually resist the movement of the whole, because it's not being included in the whole. If you create an antagonistic relationship between one part of the system, whether it's your head and your heart, or externally, whether between one country and another country, or one group and another group, that is not fundamentally sustainable. Eventually, these two parts need to find a relationship that is collaborative and cooperative in a way that supports the totality of the system, whether it's the individual, head and heart, or head and body, or the social system, or the natural system. So whatever direction that we're going to take, it in a way has to be integral, has to be a systemic approach that we can include all the voices that exist in the system. It doesn't mean that all the voices are equally mature, so to speak, but it means that all the voices have to be recognized that they exist. All the voices inside our system are there. Now, some voices you listen to, some voices you don't listen to. But denying the existence of that voice is a denial of reality. Because if that voice exists, if your neighbor exists, if that individual exists, then they exist. Denying their existence is a separation from reality, and that is not, by definition, sustainable. So how do we move into the future with a new operating system? So one, feeling that systemic kind of disassembling, where our social structures are disassembling, our identity is disassembling, and rather than resisting it, can we allow ourselves to go with it? Can we allow ourselves to go with it and let go of the older ideas that we had about ourselves, about where we're going? Can you allow yourself to sink into a place where you are letting go of the structures that you consider yourself to be? Letting go of the way you navigate your life based on belief structures and all the things that are connected to our social network. As you do that, can you connect with something which is not a structure? Can you connect with something inside of yourself which is not an idea, which is not a belief, which is not a conditioned structure? And as you connect with that part of yourself which is not a structure, can you feel into who you are at this level, this part of you that is not a structure. Who you are at this level, how you want to relate to life around you. What is the nature of that relationship that you're going to have that is fundamentally sustainable with yourself and sustainable for life as well? How do we create a relationship that can honor all of the needs of the system? So how do we create a relationship that honors all of the needs of the system, your system and the system that we live in, and all of the other systems, all of the other human systems, social systems, environmental systems that we live in relationship with, that we are part of. But discovering this new relationship with the systems that we live with can't necessarily be based on a belief structure. It has to be based on something intelligent, something alive, something that functions in the moment, that we can recognize, that we can use, but not on a structure that somebody has told us this is the right way to do it, but rather something that we can see for ourselves. This is the direction I need to move in a way that honors myself and honors the world I live in. That's something that we have to taste, so to speak. We have to recognize directly. So how do we recognize this new relationship with life that is sustainable, that honors the needs of who I am and the world that I live in? And that the discovery of this comes directly from the ability to let go of our ideas and our structures of ourselves. The discovery of this new relationship, this new operating system, comes directly from a letting go of the structures and the ideas and the beliefs that we have about ourselves, and the structures and the ideas and the beliefs we have about the world around us. So that we're no longer using beliefs as a way to guide behavior. We're no longer using structures as a way to determine what is right and what is wrong. We're using a direct relationship that we have with life, with ourselves, and with the world around us that determines how we navigate the decisions we need to make. And if it's sustainable, if we're going to have a sustainable relationship with the world, with ourselves and with the world around us, it has to be inclusive. That's evident, that's obvious. And as we want something sustainable and therefore inclusive, what's the quality of that relationship? The quality of a relationship in its natural sense is that life wants to flourish. Life wants to evolve. This is its nature from the beginning of the universe until now. Life is a movement of becoming more awake, more fundamentally awake, more fundamentally in connection with itself, awake to itself. Life strives to flourish. Now, that's the general movement of life. Now, not all life flourishes. That's true. But the general movement of life is a movement towards a greater wakefulness, a greater conscious experience of itself. So if we align with that general movement of life, we're looking at a movement that is one, sustainable, that is two, inclusive, that's three, is becoming more conscious of itself, more awake to itself. And in that consciousness and creativity starts to show up with that conscious experience of itself. So we're looking at a life which is creative, a life which flourishes, and a life which evolves. A life, in terms of Aikido, a life of harmony. A harmonic, flourishing, evolving experience that we have with ourselves and with the world that we experience. So how do we connect? How do we connect with the sense? How do we connect with the sense that that we can discover directly a relationship with life that allows us to create a relationship which is sustainable, is inclusive, allows us to flourish, allows us to evolve, allows the rest of the system to flourish, for the rest of the system to evolve, and fundamentally in a sense where we are in harmony with that relationship. That the nature of that relationship is a relationship of harmony. And that's not a belief structure. That is something that needs to be discovered in your own heart, in your own bodies, in your mind. And if we're going to create that externally, we have to create that internally with our own systems. We have to start moving in a way that we are already opening to an inclusive, sustainable relationship with our emotional being, moving in an inclusive and sustainable relationship with our physical being, allowing the intelligence of our system to function and flourish as a system, as an inclusive experience, and expanding that outward to include our relationship with our neighbors, with our friends, with our communities, with our social networks, with our societies, with other societies, and with the natural world that we live in. So how do we open ourselves up to that new operating system, which is not based on belief structures, which is not based on traditions? It includes them, but goes beyond them. We're not looking for an operating system which destroys the past. We're looking for an operating system that transcends and includes the past. But it links directly with something that we fundamentally can recognize ourselves through the relationship itself. And this is discovered not by taking somebody else's experience, but by experiencing it ourselves directly. And that direct experience is something that we could call meditation. A meditation on our relationship with life itself. So as we find ourselves getting deconstructed during this quarantine process, how do we set the the system up, set the stage, open the context for us to discover a new way of operating as we emerge out of this quarantine and start to engage with life again. Because obviously, if we go back to what was, we will repeat the same problems that we've had now. And if that happens, so be it. But if we can evolve through this into a new way of operating, then there are certain qualities that this new operating system will need to have. And the qualities of that new operating system is something that I feel we have to connect with directly at the individual level and the collective level. That is an operating system which functions based not just solely on the traditions and ideas that we've developed, but on a direct relationship that we have with life itself. And opening up to experiencing the actual relationship we have with the natural world. Can we feel the connection that we have with the natural world as a direct link? For myself, appreciating the natural world has usually been something that happens, but isn't something that actually feels like a lifeline between this body and this mind, this heart, and the nature around. There's always been a slight sense of separation, and in this last week, that separation has diminished considerably into a point where there is a tremendous recognition of the lifeline the natural world provides between itself and this self, myself. And that has been very helpful with opening up to this new operating system that I'm pointing out to. But don't take my experience. I encourage and invite each one of you to access your experience. You define what are those qualities that you feel are going to help you as an individual and us as a collective to operate in a new way with life and with each other that is sustainable, that is in harmony, that allows people the opportunity to flourish, to evolve, that doesn't deny the existence of anything, but includes the totality of everything, so that everything, in a way, the existence of everything can be recognized and the existence of it can be honored. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everything, but in a way that we are able to recognize the experience that we are having as a unified system. So this is an invitation to go inward, to open yourself to that process that you feel are getting drawn into, in the sense of our plans for the future and our identities of ourselves are getting challenged, to discovering a new way of operating that is beyond our ideas and beliefs of the past, that functions in a way that we all want, that we all wish for on a deep level. this discovery of this new operating system has to be made in such a way that we all can access it. So it's a different way of working. So I want to thank you for spending a few minutes of your time this morning on Easter Monday to consider these questions that we all feel are important. And I encourage you to take that step for yourself, to actually define and explore the quality of the relationship you would hope to have with all of the aspects of yourself and all of the things in the world around you that you feel can move us into a new direction for the future, a direction that can support us for the long term, and all of the needs of the system that we are as individuals and the world around us are included and honored. And for that, the responsibility for discovering that lies on each one of us. It's not something we can ask somebody else to do.